Ever wondered how dyslexia could unlock academic superpowers? I'm Dr. Frank Douglas, the host of the Antifragility Reframe podcast, where struggle becomes strength and stress fuels growth. My guest today is Mr. Russell Van Brocklen. He is New York State funded dyslexic researcher. He's presently completing a book which covers the work that he has done with numerous dyslexic students. In our episode today, we are going to explore the challenges of dyslexic students as they face the traditional educational system. Mr. Van Brocklen, welcome.
Thanks for having me on.
I'm so delighted that you are here. This is such an important issue, and unfortunately, there's so many children and then adults who unfairly get left behind because they're dyslexic, and it's either not recognized in their youth or not treated. And you have been very successful personally first, and then in helping others. So please. Tell us your story, the beginning of your journey with dyslexia.
Well, it really culminated when I wanted in the late 90s, I wanted to know how laws were made, not just some academic class I wanted to know. So I signed up for the New York State Assembly internship program. And I show up and I say, here's my neuropsychological evaluation. I have a first grade reading and writing level. And they looked at this and said, this is not going to work. So they got a committee together of very senior people. I mean, this went right up to the speaker himself. And they said, okay, we're placing you in the programming counsel's office that runs the assembly day to day because they had three administrative assistants that could help with my horrific writing. And it worked out brilliantly. Then for our academic portion, you have to do this huge research paper. A very standard accommodation for me at the time was I'd give a very long oral presentation. And the professor in residence, who was from Syracuse, an associate professor, said, anybody else want to do an oral report? This is what I'm putting on Russell. And he made it so onerous, nobody else wanted it. So I gave which was fine for me because I've been doing these for years. Gave the report. They recommended 15 credits of A minus. It goes back to the political science department at the State University of New York Center at Buffalo. They look at it and they go, we don't like these accommodations. So here's your 15 credits of F. At that point, I was just like, I am done with this nonsense. I want to solve reading and writing for dyslexics. And I asked my professors, and they said, where am I compelled to do this in grad school? They kind of laughed and said, law school. I said, oh, okay. So I went and I signed up for law school to audit. They couldn't believe I did it. I specifically went to see Professor Warner, who was a dyslexic law professor for decades. Second class in contracts, he calls on me. They use the Socratic method. If you don't know the answer, they keep asking you questions to embarrass the heck out of you to compel you to learn how to argue any side of any issue at any time. He called on me. That didn't happen. What I found out later is that if you're dyslexic, you walk into grad school, you own the place day one. So I walk in, everything lined up for the first time in my life. It was organized for the first time ever. I lean forward. I start yelling at Professor Warner. He leans forward. He starts yelling at me. These passionate arguments are within the bounds of what you expect in law school. And we're shouting at each other back and forth faster and faster for 15 minutes. And at the end, he said, Russell, in the interest of time, I cannot go further. You have to move on to the next case. You couldn't be any more correct. I kept in contact with a lot of my friends there, even after they passed the bar. They said they couldn't come close to that performance.
Mhm.
Within a matter of weeks, I learned to read. A couple of years, I learned to write. Then I want to share what I've learned with everybody else. And I want the New York State government to pay for it, to pay for my research. Finally, the New York State Senate decides to pay for it. Multi-year study at my old high school, Averill Park, right outside of Albany, New York. So I want to know what can I do with the best and brightest. So the rule was they were highly motivated, highly intelligent, dyslexic students, the ideal, selected by the school district. Their teacher was Susan Ford, their best teacher. One class period a day for the school year. Their reading and writing increased from the middle school level to average of entering graduate school students. One class period a day for the school year.
So tell me, what approach do you use that
Oh,
produces?
let's go to the science. This is the top book in my field. You're a medical doctor. Dr. Shaywitz is a medical doctor. Brain scans. That's dyslexia.
Hmm.
Okay. Do you see how the back part of your brain has all this neural activity?
Hmm.
Do you see how mine has next to nothing?
Hmm.
Now, let's look at the front part. Do you see how the front part of my brain is about 2.5 times more active than yours?
Hmm.
Okay. The front part of the brain, according to Dr. Shaywitz, deals with articulation followed by word analysis. Now, when I did my original program, it was called the Graduate Records Exam Analytical Writing Section, Analytical Articulation. In my book, the same thing. That's why the dyslexics were so successful.
So when you say articulation, tell us what does that really, actually mean?
So when you're looking at the GRE, the Graduate Records Exam in
Hmm.
specific, what they do is they give you, this is back in the OOs, they gave you the most drunken, ridiculous, stupid argument and then some evidence to try to support it. So what the students had to articulate was why this argument made no sense. Okay, rip it apart from three body paragraphs and say what changes would need to be made to make it work. They had to articulate that in writing. And that's what we focused on. They repeated the same process over and over and over again until they got it. Their spelling, key things, spelling and grammar. The evaluator was one of the it was a SUNY distinguished professor in psychology. That's the highest level in the State University of New York system. And what she said was the spelling and grammar pre-test was horrendously bad. Post-test, it was clean at the graduate level. And Susan Ford, the teacher, said she spent almost no time on spelling and grammar. It auto-corrected.
Why does it autocorrect?
Because the main issue is when you're teaching dyslexic. So I'm going to step back for a second. When I had to shift over to normal kids, typical students, I had to switch it over to word analysis followed by articulation. But that's step three. Step one is we had to focus on their speciality, their area of extreme interest and ability, because we like working in a very narrow area, which is more like grad school. They're in that area, they're motivated. They step out, they're not. For the intervention period until they're at grade level, that's what we focused on. But then the next question is we didn't teach from the general to the specific, because that's like asking a dyslexic to grab fog. We had to teach from the specific to the general. Why? Because if you ask a dyslexic, in your speciality, do you have ideas flying around your head at light speed but with little to no organization? They're going to say yes. So then what we have to do is to force the brain to organize itself by using writing as a measurable output. So what I did when I constructed the original course is we gave them a very templated essay to fill in, and they just had to fill in the various parts of it. And as they did that over and over again, it forced their brain to organize itself, and that allowed them to start fixing problems that they've been having for their entire life. A lot of it just auto-corrected.
You know, as you say that, the truth of the matter is for any child,
Mhm.
and I think this is the Montessori, and I'm not a Montessori expert, but the little I know of Montessori, I think that this is probably part of what they do, is that if you get the child to focus on what the child is interested in and get the child to do specific projects around what they're interested in, they learn very fast and they learn, and they go from that to learning broadly. And it just strikes me that you have actually applied that to the dyslexic. Who actually,
Very much, but for gen ed students, as you recall, you're an incredibly accomplished academic. All you had to do to be successful, and I'm not trying to belittle your accomplishments, is you just had to work really, really hard. And you knew if you put in the effort and put in the time, your results were going to be more or less predictable.
yep,
If you didn't put in the effort, forget about it. But
yep.
you knew what you had to do. With dyslexics, they could work twice as hard as you did and still fail with honors.
Hmm.
So, how do we correct that? I'm again going to go back to the science. Again, there's the brain. We have to focus on that front part. What do I mean by the speciality? Find out what the kid's really, really interested in. And to give you an example, when I do this privately, this is the most popular book that my kids want. Walt Disney, all 1,000 pages of this. I give this to a 10-year-old with a second grade reading level. Why? Because they want to know what the Disney magic is. Have you ever been to Disneyland or Disney World?
Yes, yes. As a
So,
matter of fact, I took some of my scientists to their innovation lab.
yes. So you walk into the Magic Kingdom from Disneyland and you're Main Street, USA. That's Marceline, Missouri. That's where Walt was between 5 and 10. He spent the rest of his life trying to get back there. Why am I spending so much time on this? Because there are two universal themes in his biography to understand and to replicate that Disney magic. And it starts out by learning 3,500 words from Marceline, Missouri. I take 10-year-olds, 11-year-olds reading at the second grade level, and in a matter of 6 to 9 months, they're reading 10th grade level material, which that chapter is based on. Within 2 years, they're reading that entire book. Yes, we're in one book for 2 years. That when I had a 10-year-old girl start off that at 12, she finally figured out the second universal theme. Her mom had a master's degree, couldn't find it. And as 12-year-old girls in that situation will do, she said, "Mom, it's right there." And the mom said, "I can't believe I missed it." And I said, "Your 12-year-old daughter with dyslexia can now comprehend better in this instance than you can, and you have a master's degree." That's how powerful the speciality is. So, how do you figure it out for your audience? It's a Saturday morning. Your kid can do whatever they want. What do they want to do? That's their speciality. Number two is you have to teach them not from the general to the specific, which you can't ask them what effect did Martin Luther King's famous "I Have a Dream" speech have on the American Civil Rights Movement. It's like grabbing fuck. There's nothing we can do with it. We ask what personally compelled Martin Luther King to want to give his famous speech. We go to his biography, we find the answer. Another question presents itself. We answer that. Another question presents itself. It forces us to force our brain to organize ourselves by using writing as a measurable output. Then we do word analysis followed by articulation, and we're all set.
So how many, just in closing, how many students do you have in this program?
Well, that initial program we ran was about 13 over a couple of years.
Mhm.
Okay. Then what I went back and I wanted to present it to the field. And then what I learned, I thought I did something amazing. I thought I was done. I was wrong. I had to completely redo it for the younger kids.
Mhm.
All right. And then I had to uh, move it up to the craft of research. I had to do both at the same time. But since that time, we literally had hundreds of students go through that program. But they were very specific. These were the very motivated, the very intelligent students, and we just had to get them ready for college really fast. And that's what we did with it.
You make your students anti-fragile. They
Oh,
come better.
we take them and we literally we start off with context. So, example, that mom I was just speaking with, who said I can tell her story but not her name. Um, in a matter, again, her son's 9. In a matter of 3 weeks, her kid was writing at the kindergarten level. He's supposed to be in fourth grade. She's homeschooled. And now he's writing one reason sentences. And he's making them longer.
Mhm.
So it's like Bob enjoys playing video games because he enjoys the excitement. 3 weeks ago, he was writing kindergarten level.
Mr. Van Brocklen, thank you very much.